As someone who is from Detroit, this puts a very different spin on the Detroit versus everybody mantra. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Been a little quiet. Holidays, 4th of July. I took some time just away from everything and was just lazy. Was lazy, didn't do anything but just watch TV and movies. In doing so, there are a lot of films that I saw. So, this course of the week, you're going to see me talking about, obviously, Loki, because I know I didn't talk about episode 4, but I'll do 4 and 5 together. But also just talk about all the movies that I consumed this week. But the one that I have to just talk about, I saw last night. It's sort of an earworm or eye worm, I guess, in this case. It's something that I just cannot get out of my head. But I'm talking about Zola. It's a new film, independent movie based on a series of tweets from a exotic dancer stripper from Detroit who got caught up into a very crazy game. So I gotta say this: going in, I had no knowledge of the Twitter thread. I was not aware of it. Did not know it was a thing that had basically become this viral sensation. What got me and what got me interested in seeing this was the trailer. The first trailer looked so batshit crazy and so bizarre that I was like, I don't know what this is, but I want to see it. And so I did. I went last night, and I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. It is nuts. Um, it is a road trip movie from hell. And without having the context of what the tweets were, I just thought that this is a really well done story. Very stylized, but very just almost unbelievable. You would think that this couldn't have happened. I think both of the leads, Taylor Page, who plays Zola, and Riley Q, who plays Stephanie, are great. Riley is insanely good to the point that I just could not take my eyes off of her. She's enchanting in this. And it's weird because she is so good, but you also really, really hate her, as you should, because she is the antagonist, and as Zola would say, this is the bitch that got me to do all this dumb shit. Like it just sets up the likability of her, sets up the hate that you eventually will have for her, and just how she is clearly rat trapping and trapping these girls to kind of do the things that she needs them to do for whatever gain. So I say all this to say that if you haven't heard the story, I think this is a good movie to see without having the Twitter thread with it. However, because I heard about that Twitter thread, I immediately was like, well, after I finish this movie, I have to go read this Twitter thread. And I did. So last night after I went back and read, oh, it's a very long, as she said, it's going to be a long story. I read a very long story about the specifics of what happened from her viewpoint, from her telling, which makes this movie even more amazing. Because somehow in those tweets, with incorrect spellings and the ratchetness and the heightened, just like, oh crap, what's happening next? You're just engaged in it. All of that was one to one recreated in the film. So you feel those intense moments. You feel that moment of just hilarity, even though it's dangerous. You feel, because you're being told this through the eyes of Zola, it all comes across. Every single aspect of what those tweets did, which is rare to get, like almost a one to one, especially for a short story or a form. One to one, you feel every inch of that story being told and recreated here, and it just, the essence of those tweets comes across in the film, which is just amazing to see, to the point where I want to go back and rewatch the film just to kind of get that feeling again, because you're always kind of like, I don't know what the fuck's happening next. This is insane. Wait, what? They did what? Oh my god, you did what? That type of thing goes on throughout the entire time. And not much has changed. There are some things that I think are just altered a bit for the story purposes. There's some slight tweaks here and there, mainly to sort of Derek's story. He is very whipped, and his ability, his whipped they only take it so far in the film. They don't push him all the way over that edge to the very end. Whereas in the stories, there's a point where Zola says that Jarrett, which is his real name, um, had to watch his girl perform fellatio on her pimp Z in front of him, and that happened sort of in the middle act. That didn't happen in the film, so it's not a one to one. Things do happen. They kind of calm that down, and it makes sense because I think if you did that in the movie, as a viewer, there are already a lot of things where you're kind of just like, well, this doesn't make any sense. This could this have happened, and then you see it in the tweets. I think you do it in the film just because at that point the audience is like, Derek, you have to get out of this. You can't keep simping this bad. So I think you just want to calm that down and Peter a little bit too. You want to put him as an extreme as you go along and not do it right in the middle of the film. But everything else, it's basically a one to one. They even do a cute little twist where Stephanie, who in the Twitter story is named Jessica, she did her sort of a retort on Reddit. And so in this film, you get a pretty amazing twist of seeing this story or parts of the story that they've sort of gone through the eyes of Stephanie, which watching it back and then going back, if you should also, in addition to reading the Twitter thread, you should go back and read the Reddit thread that Jessica made. But in doing so, you can see that there are a lot of white privileges or code words that are used to sort of demean African American people consistently. And so that is recreated in the film, and you sort of get that from her viewpoint and how she was just a trifling ass, you know what. One of the biggest things that immediately stuck out to me after this movie was over, outside of like the style, the colors, the music, the way fonts are based, the way the at symbols being used to sort of say that this is a recreation or a retelling or a visionary piece to go along with the Twitter threads. And if you even read them side by side, it literally flows. But the one thing that really stands out to me is that the director chose to, while this is a story about Zola and Stephanie / Jessica going on this road trip and you being exotic dancers, strippers, or in this case, a sex worker, they are the sexual beings. They are the sexual pieces, and I feel like there was a choice that in this film there is no nudity, no female nudity. Like you see sex acts occurring, but it's filmed in a way that the women are protected, if you will. You see a bunch of dicks. The male genitalia is just out there, and there's no way that was not done on purpose. And I can't quite figure out why it is. And I like the choice. There's something that they're choosing to still protect the women in this point and make these deviants who are actually preying on women in this way come off more as the deviants and be used sexually more so than the women. And I thought that was a cool little choice. This movie does have, it's interesting. This movie does have an issue sort of sticking the landing. It does not bother me, but there are going to be some people who will leave like, wait, well, that's it? Or that's the end? I think when you read these Twitter stories, you'll understand that like you're basically spending this, and other than one sequence where I think they spend basically a bit of time with Derek in the room by himself, and that's more sort of set up what happens at the end. It is all done with you as the camera person right next to Taylor Page, to Zola. That's literally who you're with the entire time. Just like you are with the story, you're seeing it through her eyes. So you don't get sort of a resolution to this film because you don't really get that in the tweets. Although it's weird because that's the one part that they didn't do a one-to-one on. In the tweets, we do get a whole story about the backstory of what happens to Z when she gets home. She gets a call from Vegas. And I don't know why we didn't put that here. I think just as a director's choice, it was just better to end after this. I think tying it up just a bit might have hit home a little bit more, but I think because of the the style and the bizarreness. Me as a viewer, I was perfectly fine with it, but it is going to rub some people the wrong way. Just the abruptness of the end. It is genuinely funny. It is genuinely scary, frightening what could happen in just a blink of an eye. Sex workers, sex trafficking, if you will. Coleman Domingo as X or Z from the Twitter thread is frightening, and when he goes from one to the other, there's a great genuine amount of fear. So as much entertainment and joy and comedy and sort of just levity comes out of this entire situation, we still got to remember this was a terribly terrifying thing for the real life Zola to go through, and is what ended up with a man actually going to prison for sex trafficking and underage sex trafficking. So uh, it's a crazy and just unbelievable story that even when it was written, it sounds nuts and crazy, but to visually see it played out, it's remarkable. That it is equally as crazy and equally as nuts. And thank you to all the players to sort of put on this bravado and these get in these parts, because there are just some genuinely funny moments that I know people are. So it's almost in the vein of Spring Breakers that came out a few years ago, where there are going to be parts that this isn't going to be for everybody, but there are going to be parts of it that are like, that's a classic line or classic moments, or just the way things are delivered. That they got one. This is probably one of my favorite movies so far this year, just because it's so out of the box. So on my scale of once is enough, play it again, Sam, or give me a time stone so I never have to think about this film again. This is a play it again, Sam. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I recommend this to anyone. I would say though, do it in the way that I did, because as a movie viewer, if you have no idea what the hell is happening next, that's also good. Um, so I would say, kind of like when people don't read the books, I would say go into the movie first, watch it, maybe even don't watch the trailer, because that gives away some things or how it's going. Watch the film, then read the tweets, and I think you'll get a lot more enjoyment than folks. Not a lot more enjoyment, a different type of enjoyment than the folks who read the thread, and there are some direct lines in the way that Zola can only craft sentences and words are directly put into this. Like I'm a fool, I'm a fully nude type of bitch. Is just a line that is actually from the tweet thread that's put in the film. That type of stuff is just genius, and it gives a bit of a tangibility to a film that probably would not have worked had the Twitter thread, script, and producer of the actual Zola not been a part of this. I think that gives a bit of authenticity where, had this been given into a lesser person's hand, a director who was not black or a person who was not of the culture like Zola, this would have failed miserably. But those are my thoughts. If you've seen Zola, what do you guys think about it? Go ahead and leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. That's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any other place podcast. We're there. We have currently just done an episode for The Purge, for the Forever Purge and the Purge series as a whole. And then we did our Marvel pair with Jamie Jarek about Loki episode 4 and our thoughts on that. So if you didn't, since I did not do an episode 4 for the channel, you can kind of hear my thoughts there with the rest of the gang on that as well. But I'll recap 4 and 5 together after tonight's episode. But like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.